In the annals of English history, few dates resonate with such profound significance as October 14th, 1066. On that fateful day, near a Sussex town called Hastings, two armies clashed in a battle that would forever alter the course of England's destiny. This was no mere skirmish, but a clash of civilizations, a battle for the very soul of a nation. On one side stood Harold Godwinson, the newly crowned Anglo-Saxon King of England, a ruler determined to defend his birthright. Facing him was William, the Duke of Normandy, a ruthless and ambitious warlord who had crossed the English Channel with a claim to the throne of his own. The Battle of Hastings was a spectacle of medieval warfare, a brutal and bloody encounter between two distinct military forces. The Anglo-Saxons, renowned for their steadfast infantry, formed an impenetrable shield wall atop Senlac Hill, their ranks bristling with axes, swords and javelins. Against this formidable defence, William unleashed the full fury of his Norman cavalry. Heavily armoured knights mounted on powerful war horses, their lances lowered for the charge. The fate of England hung in the balance as these two forces collided in a maelstrom of steel and fury. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe to emgotvhistory Warfare for more tales of epic battles and historical events. The seeds of the conflict were sown years earlier, in the waning days of Edward the Confessor's reign. Edward, a deeply pious man, had died childless in January 1066, leaving the English throne without a clear heir. Into this power vacuum stepped Harold Godwinson, a powerful nobleman and the brother-in-law of the late king. Harold's claim to the throne was based on his close ties to Edward and his election by the Witan, the Council of English Nobles. However, his ascension was immediately challenged by two formidable rivals, William, Duke of Normandy, and Harold Hardrada, the Viking King of Norway. William of Normandy claimed that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier, a promise allegedly made during Harold's brief captivity in Normandy. To bolster his claim, William garnered the support of the Pope, who saw an opportunity to bring England more firmly under the influence of the Catholic Church. Meanwhile, Harold Hardrada, a descendant of Viking rulers who had once held sway over parts of England, saw Edward's death as a chance to reclaim his ancestral lands. With two powerful rivals vying for his crown, Harold Godwinson faced a desperate struggle for survival. The armies that clashed at Hastings were as different as the men who led them. Harold's forces were primarily composed of infantry, the backbone of the Anglo-Saxon army. These were hardened warriors, many of them freemen who fought with the ferocity of men defending their homeland. They were armed with a variety of weapons, including axes, swords, spears and javelins. Their signature tactic was the shield wall, a formidable defensive formation in which warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their shields interlocked, forming a nearly impenetrable barrier. William's army, on the other hand, was a more diverse force, composed of Normans, Bretons, Flemings, and other continental mercenaries. While William also fielded a substantial force of infantry, his most potent weapon was his cavalry. Norman knights, heavily armoured and mounted on powerful war horses, were a fearsome sight on the battlefield. They were trained to fight as a unit, charging with their lances lowered, their impact capable of breaking enemy lines and sowing chaos in the ranks. In addition to cavalry and infantry, William also employed archers armed with crossbows, deadly weapons capable of piercing shields and armour at long range. The Battle of Hastings, a day of blood and destiny. The Battle of Hastings began with a Norman barrage of arrows, which rained down upon the English shield wall with deadly accuracy. However, the Anglo-Saxons held their ground, their shields providing adequate protection against the missile fire. Next, William unleashed his infantry, but their assaults proved equally futile against the disciplined English defenders. Time and again, the Normans charged, only to be repulsed with heavy losses. For a time, it seemed as though Harold's forces might actually prevail. Then, William unleashed his most cunning tactic, a feigned retreat. Ordering a contingent of his cavalry to fall back as if in disarray, William lured a portion of the English army down from their advantageous position on Senlac Hill. As the pursuing English broke ranks, the retreating Normans suddenly wheeled around and charged, catching their over-eager opponents off guard. The English, their formation broken, were cut down by the Norman cavalry. The Conqueror's legacy, a transformed England. The death of Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Hastings marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule in England and the beginning of the Norman conquest. William, now known as the Conqueror, was crowned King of England on Christmas Day, 1066. The Norman conquest had a profound and lasting impact on English society, culture and language. William confiscated the lands of many English nobles and granted them to his Norman followers, creating a new ruling class loyal to the crown. He also introduced Norman French as the language of the court and administration, which had a lasting influence on the development of the English language. In architecture, the Normans built imposing castles, cathedrals and monasteries, leaving an indelible mark on the English landscape. The Battle of Hastings was a pivotal event in British history. It marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, shaping the destiny of England for centuries to come. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe to emgotvhistory Warfare for more fascinating tales from history.